The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I am pleased to speak this afternoon with respect to the Budget Implementation Act, and let me at the outset acknowledge that we're gathered here on the traditional unceded lands of the Algonquin people. And while we talk about the budget, I do want to preface this by kind of outlining the current economic state of our country. After coming through the pandemic, Canada, while facing a number of headwinds, is in a very strong position. First and foremost, we continue to have the lowest debt-to-GDP ratio in the G7. We continue to have amongst the lowest levels of unemployment in the G7, but also in Canadian history. We continue to lead and build a green economy that responds to the needs of the day, including addressing the existential threat of climate change. In many ways, Madam Speaker, the pandemic taught us that the government can be there to support Canadians of all stripes, whether it be through supporting organizations that work in the front lines, or businesses through wage subsidies, or through emergency loans that in many ways supported and were lifelines for our businesses. On an individual level, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, or CERB, has supported so many Canadians to get to the other end of the pandemic. As we look forward, Madam Speaker, we realize that the issues around inflation and increasing interest rates are a threat to our economy, and I think as a government we have been addressing this issue head on. We have, in fact, amongst the lowest rates of inflation amongst the developed countries, but also our rates of inflation has gone down to new lows, and we are confident that we will reach the 3% mark by the summer and well into the 2% mark by next year. And I think it should give us some confidence that as a steward of this economy, we have looked at our economy in a very different way than it has traditionally been viewed. We have made sure that our economy is very much linked to our environment. We don't decouple the issue. We believe that they're fundamentally related, and we cannot, under any circumstances, decouple it, because if you look at modern accounting practices, Madam Speaker, you will note that many companies are now reporting their environmental liability, and I think as we go forward, as we see the impacts of climate change, whether it's floods, whether it's wildfires, we know that the environment plays a critical role in our long-term sustainability and directly linked to our economy. So in this budget, the Minister of Finance and her team have worked very hard to put together some measures that I think will give individuals real support during the pandemic. As you know, Madam Speaker, in the fall economic statement, we had very important measures that supported Canadians on affordability. First and foremost was the GST credit, and the second one was the $500 housing rebate for those in the lowest of income brackets, and I think those were crucial in ensuring that affordability was maintained for the most vulnerable Canadians. As we look forward, we're looking at a number of targeted initiatives, the critical one being a one-time grocery rebate, which for many Canadians, for 11 million Canadians, in fact, will support them in making ends meet. And while we know that it's not a permanent fix, we do realize that in this most difficult times, we need to get Canadians to the other side of these economic threats. And I believe that this is a very smart way of addressing this issue. With respect to predatory lending, Madam Speaker, when I was in law school, my first year of law school, a professor by the name of Ian Ramsey was my contracts prof. And he was at Osgood, a very highly respected professor. And during our contracts class, his singular focus was on predatory lending. He did an enormous amount of research on the impacts of predatory lending on low-income Canadians, the cycle of debt that it brings individuals and subsequently young families into, and the systemic challenges of getting out of this debt. And as a result, I learned a great deal about those who are dependent on payday loans, which can only be described as predatory. And I realize this was over 20 years ago, Madam Speaker, so I'm actually quite heartened, but maybe somewhat also disappointed that it took Canada this many years to get to this point where we're actually addressing this issue head on and ensuring that we are redefining the notion of criminal interest rate and ensuring that those who are dependent on payday loans, are most vulnerable, are supported. So I think it's something that I believe is fundamentally important to the economy, but also to those who may be struggling right now. In addition, Madam Speaker, we are cracking down on junk fees to ensure businesses are transparent with the prices that they're set to pay. We're also looking to implement tax filing, automatic tax filing for low-income Canadians. So every year, I know my colleagues here will probably relate to this as well. Every year, we have a volunteer who has, since I was elected in 2015, comes every February. In fact, even if we don't call her, she calls us and she offers up her time to do tax returns, and every year that service is full. She really does it as a service to her community, to those who are struggling, but to those where the tax return is so critical to their income, whether it be the Canada Child Benefit or Old Age Security Guaranteed Income Supplement or other government entitlements. She's very diligent in getting this done, and there are literally thousands of tax preparers who do this out of the kindness of their heart to make sure that they're entitled, that they support other Canadians. So automatic tax filing, Madam Speaker, in many ways, I think will ensure that those who are left outside of the ability to prepare a tax or to be able to get the type of help that's provided by my office, and I'm sure many of my colleagues' offices are supported. So I'm very glad to confirm that automatic tax filing will be coming and is included in the Budget Implementation Act. We know that students have had a particularly difficult time. As I interviewed for the summer leadership program that we have, and I'm pleased to say that we'll have 2 students that are starting next week. And as a government, we have, I think, over 150 students with over 4,000 applicants of students who applied to our program. And this is I believe, our 7th year in running this program. And it is so good to see the quality of candidates that are coming forward. But when I speak to students, I know they're struggling, whether it's through the youth constituency advisory council I have, or through University of Toronto Scarborough campus, which is located in my riding, or Centennial College. I hear from students the issue of affordability, and oftentimes it's the ability to pay the tuition or to make ends meet, Madam Speaker. And I believe that there are many measures in here, including increased grants that will enable students to ensure that their education is affordable. And I would note that I'll often say that in our society, education is our ultimate equalizer, and the measures that we have in place will support students to attain an education. I believe I may be limited on time, Madam Speaker, but I look forward to the questions and comments from my colleagues. Thank you.
Questions and comments?